an executive order to prevent NGOs from transporting illegal immigrants in Texas. And 10th, Texas took legal action to enforce the Remain in Mexico policy as well as the Title 42 policy. In that regard, a federal judge in Texas ruled in our favor, commanding the Biden administration to continue to keep the Remain in Mexico policy in place. The Biden administration has refused not only to keep that policy in place, but the Biden administration has also ignored that order issued by a federal court that was appealed all the way up to the Supreme Court and allowed to stay in place at this time. The Biden administration is in violation of a federal court order to impose the Remain in Mexico policy. Last, I want to make clear that while Biden continues to dither, Texas and other states are taking action to do the federal government's job. I thank the governors from across America who have sent resources to our state. They understand the magnitude of the problem as well as the need for action. And I thank the governors who were able to adjust their schedules to be with us here today. There are several other speakers, including first, the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Steve McCraw.
Thank you, Governor. You've heard us say this before, you've heard the Governor say it. There cannot be the most significant threat to Texas is clearly an unsecured international border with Mexico. It's the most significant public safety and homeland security threat. It's allowed Mexican cartels to evolve and become the most dangerous, most violent, most brutal criminal organizations in the world. They dominate the drug and human trafficking market throughout the United States. And if you have a fentanyl problem in Iowa, you have one in Oklahoma, you have a border problem. And that's exactly what's been going on. The governor's taken us, the state's spent a lot of money over the years in terms of how we can provide direct support to the brave men and women of the U.S. Border Patrol to be able to support their mission. What the governor's done now, though, is taken us from a reactive position and put us in a proactive position and a preventive position. So no more in terms of detection, interdiction, okay, and seizure and apprehension. The focus is prevention from the start and leaning forward in that regard. To that end, he's formulated a plan that has all the border basics, including infrastructure, personnel, capabilities, technology, and doctrine that can secure the Texas-Mexico border. And unfortunately, the state of Texas has made it very clear, the governor's made it very clear, we can't wait for Washington to do it. We don't need their permission to protect Texas, the bottom line. And we're forced, we're blessed the fact that the governor's leaned forward on this particular issue. And Governor, thank you on behalf of the men and women of the Department of Public Safety and the state of Texas for all you do for public safety and for those people in the law enforcement profession. It means a lot that you care, and so does the state legislature. And I know these governors feel the same way. And so we're proud to stand with you today, and thank you for all you do. And thank you for sending troopers down here and resources. We appreciate that. We know that by putting them here, we've been able to protect your state, and I know you care deeply about protecting your citizens from harm, and God bless you. And Governor, that's all my remarks.
Thank you. Next we have Brandon Judd, the President of the Border Patrol Council.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Brandon.
Greatly appreciate it. Governors, thank you. Thank you. I can tell you that law enforcement greatly appreciates the work these men and women are doing. Sure would have been nice if we could have had just as many Democrat governors as well to discuss this issue. We have to have an honest conversation. Criminal cartels listen to actions. They don't care about words. And the actions of the Biden administration is very clear. If you cross the border illegally, you will be rewarded. And that's what this administration is doing. So as they give lip service to an issue, as they say the borders are closed, their actions clearly demonstrate otherwise. If we continue to reward criminality, if we continue to reward people for crossing the borders illegally, people are going to continue to come. It's interesting, we always say we shouldn't recreate the wheel. President Biden has the blueprints. President Trump did, in fact, create the wheel. He showed what needs to be done in order to control illegal immigration. If we can control illegal immigration, we can then go after the profits of the cartels. We can cut down on the drugs that are going to these states, that are killing so many of our children, of our family members. If we can't do that, the cartels will continue to control everything that is happening on the border. President Biden has a responsibility to the citizens of this great nation to do what's right by them, not by the cartels. Do not allow the cartels to make the profits that they are making, which, by the way, is over $400 million every month in illegal alien smuggling. That does not count the drug smuggling. Over $400 million a month. That's an astronomical number. There's a reason that they're in that business, in the illegal business. Again, I want to thank the governors. I feel for you. I feel for what you have to deal with in your states, with your families, with your family members, simply because we don't have the policies that does not cost the taxpayer a cent. If you ask me, do we need more resources? We do. Do we need more infrastructure? Yes. Technology? Yes. But it must start with policy. Policy will allow us to get this under control, and then we can look at what needs to be done after that. Governor Abbott's leadership on this issue has been fantastic. Law enforcement is grateful to him for what he's been doing to help us try to get this issue under control. But without President Biden, we're going to continue to talk about this year in, year out. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Next is Arizona Governor Doug Ducey.
Thanks very much, Brandon, and I want to say thank you to Governor Abbott for welcoming us to see what's unfolding here in Texas. The situation here is certainly outrageous, and I want you to know you've seen the coverage. Men on horseback, literally herding men and women. Thousands of migrants gathered in a Bidenville under Del Rio Bridge. Children abandoned on the treacherous journey to our country. It's a tragedy, and I can tell you the border situation is just as out of control in the state of Arizona. The border sector in Yuma has had more than a 1,000% increase in apprehensions compared to last year, the highest increase among all sectors. The Tucson sector has seen more than a 200% increase in apprehensions. And it's not just the people that are crossing the border, it's the lethal drugs. Almost 2,000 pounds of fentanyl and over 13,000 pounds of methamphetamine have been seized in Arizona's sectors alone this year. Just think about how many drugs are slipping through the cracks and slipping into the bloodstreams in our communities. This isn't a figure of speech, this is our reality. Fentanyl overdoses have replaced car accidents as the leading cause of death for people 19 and younger in Pima County, one of our border communities. Pima County deputy sheriffs are responding to a call involving fentanyl every 40 hours. By neglecting the border, President Biden has fueled an opioid epidemic in America. The Biden border crisis has also led to a disturbing rise in crime in our streets. Because our border sheriffs have to spread their personnel thin between the border and the rest of their counties, there are far fewer officers patrolling our streets and keeping Arizonans safe. In Yuma, the amount of theft has increased by over 36% compared to the second half of last year. Homicides in Tucson are up almost 60% compared to this time last year. Our law enforcement officers in Arizona are some of the best in the nation, but they can only do so much when hundreds of thousands of migrants are flooding into the country illegally every month. There are three people to blame for making America a more dangerous place: President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It's no secret anymore. They have created this crisis, and Americans know it. This year, President Biden took the oath of office to become our country's 46th Commander-in-Chief. Instead of commanding our military, he's commanded drug cartels and other criminals to wreak havoc on the United States. He and Vice President Harris and Secretary Mayorkas have allowed criminals and drugs to run rampant in our streets, and it's time for them to do something about it. I've joined 25 other governors, many who are standing behind me today, in sending a letter to President Biden requesting a meeting now. Either he's unwilling to solve this crisis or he doesn't know how. So we're here to offer solutions. It's been 16 days since we sent the president the letter, and we still haven't heard anything back. We're not going to sit around while Joe Biden refuses to act. The White House press secretary last week told the Republican governors to be a part of the solution. We've tried to meet with the president and be a part of the solution, but he refuses. Even worse, he ignores, just like he's ignoring the border and the well-being of the American people. If the president won't meet with us, then we'll share our policy ideas today. Hopefully he'll hear the solutions and act. The Biden administration should begin by dedicating federal resources needed to eradicate human trafficking and drug trafficking along the southern border. We need additional resources to fight drug cartels, arrest offenders, support victims, and prevent lethal and dangerous drugs from reaching American cities and schools across our country. The Drug Enforcement Administration issued a public safety warning for the first time in 6 years as international and domestic traffickers flood the U.S. with fake prescriptions laced with lethal doses of fentanyl. Americans' lives are at risk. We need this administration to provide adequate resources to stop the flow of these deadly drugs across the border. The border must be secured and criminals must be deported. On top of that, the U.S. should re-enter all agreements with our Northern Triangle partners, including Mexico. Upon taking office, President Biden issued an ill-advised and frankly foolish executive order that terminated agreements with El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. Those countries had already agreed to enforce their respective borders, fix their asylum systems, and receive migrants seeking asylum before they journey north to the United States upon Joe Biden's open borders invitation. And our final solution is about communication. President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Biden administration officials at every level of government need to speak with a unified and clear voice to potential migrants. Our country's borders are not open, and abuse or misuse of the asylum system will not be tolerated. This isn't hard, or at least it shouldn't be, but we are talking about the Biden administration after all. We can turn things around. We can keep drugs out of our communities and our schools, and we can make our streets safer. We can have an immigration policy that doesn't include men on horseback herding migrants. President Biden, this is up to you. Are you willing to make the changes necessary to keep Americans and these migrants out of harm's way? That's the question you need to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And next is Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds.
Thank you, Governor. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, over the past 8 months, we have seen illegal immigration just soar, and in fact, it's becoming a migration. And Joe Biden has done absolutely nothing to confront this self-inflicted crisis. As chief executives of our state, Republican governors have come together to discuss what we expect the federal government to take action on so that we can stop the crisis and humanitarian crisis that's happening at this border. You know, the security, we have seen, we need Joe Biden to step up and lead. We can do this by enacting common sense policies that will reduce never-ending programs. But his policies have done just the exact opposite. What we're seeing coming out of the Biden administration is incentivizing actual migration, and illegal crossings is at a 20-year high, including the crossings of unaccompanied children. And what they're doing after that is they're secretly transporting them into our states across this country. And Iowa is one of those states. In April, we had 15 unaccompanied minor girls that were flown into the Des Moines airport in the middle of the night, and then they were boarded on charter buses. And after we were made aware of this happening in the state of Iowa, we reached out to the Biden administration to ask them if they were responsible for this action taking place. And for over a month, they denied any involvement in this action. And so we were concerned that it could be human trafficking. And so we used our own resources to continue to investigate the plane that had 19 young women being dropped off in the state of Iowa and moved to charter buses. After weeks of denying that they had no involvement in it whatsoever, they finally admitted that it was their administration that was responsible for that plane landing in the state of Iowa. I can tell you Tennessee has a similar story, as well as Iowa. So if this is happening in Iowa, and if it is happening in Tennessee, this is happening in states all across our country. And at a minimum, this administration should not only provide transparency, but they should notify governors across this country when illegal migrants and unaccompanied children are being dropped off in our state, because then we become responsible for them. So that is a policy solution that he could enact tomorrow. In addition to that, he should require the Office of Refugee Resettlement to enforce that policy action. In addition to that, they need to resume the deportation of all convicted criminals. When President Biden took office, the first thing he did was to issue an executive order that ordered ICE to do limited deportations. That is unacceptable. That should have never happened. All convicted illegal criminals need to be deported, and that is another thing that he could do tomorrow.
Thank you, Governor. And next we have Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts.
Thank you very much, Governor Abbott, for hosting us here today. And I want to start by thanking the men and women of the Customs and Border Patrol. They are heroes helping to secure our nation's border here, and they need to be supported. So thank you to them. I also want to thank all the National Guard and law enforcement folks who are also doing the same. So can we give them a round of applause too, please? Thank you. President Biden thinks that he can ignore this humanitarian and security crisis and it will go away. But we are here today to shine a light on what is going on here at the southern border and how it is impacting all of our states, not just the state of Texas. And that's why we put forward this 10-point plan that Governor Abbott kicked off for us and my other colleagues had highlighted. I'm going to round out a couple more of the points that we're asking for as part of this overall plan that we know will work to help us stem this mass migration into our country. One of the things the Biden administration must do is end the catch and release program. This was an Obama-era program that was terminated under the Trump administration and restarted again under the Biden administration. What this does is just incentivize people to come across the border illegally because they are then released. And that is creating a crisis not only here at the border, but health hazards across our country. So if you think about what's going on here, as reports have shown, 18% of the families that are coming here illegally and being released are testing positive for coronavirus, COVID-19. And when it comes to the unaccompanied minors, that's 20%. In fact, I think there's a report out there that shows that the Biden administration may have placed up to 40,000 COVID positive people into our cities here in the United States. What the Biden administration needs to do is stop this policy and then resource the judicial system to be able to expedite these cases. There is a record over 1 million people that are waiting to get their cases heard. As we heard earlier today from Brandon Judd in our briefing, this can take 2 years before their court case comes back up again. And that's if they show back up. So the Biden administration must take steps to end this catch and release program. And then also, the Biden administration must properly resource this border. That means they need to resource more for Customs and Border Patrol and the National Guard. Now look, folks, this is not new. 4 previous administrations have deployed National Guard troops to the border to be able to help out with this crisis down here. The Biden administration needs to call up more soldiers to be able to do that. They can do that under Title 10 so that the states don't bear the cost. That's what the proper role of the federal government is. But because they have failed to properly resource this border, states like Nebraska have stepped up. Earlier this summer, we provided the state of Texas with some of our state troopers to be able to come out and help out with some of the law enforcement. And let me tell you, folks, the stories are just heart-wrenching. When I was talking to Captain Jason Scott, who led our mission, he was talking about how most of the people they encountered coming across the border illegally surrendered to them because of the dire conditions they were in. They wanted the help. He talked about a 2-year-old who had been in the desert for 2 weeks with no food. This is the humanitarian crisis that is going on right here in the state of Texas. The president must act. He cannot continue to ignore this humanitarian and security crisis any longer. And he has seen that we, the states, have a 10-point plan that will address this, and we know, as Brandon Judd was talking about earlier, it will work because it's worked before. We're calling on the president to act to end this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Also want to let you know, also joining with us here today is the governor from Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, the governor from Ohio, DeWine, the governor from Georgia, Governor Kemp, the Idaho governor, Brad Little, Montana governor, Greg Gianforte, and the Wyoming governor, Mark Jordan. And we have with us the Texas Adjutant General, Tracy Norris, as well as the National Guard General in charge of border security, and that is General Ulis. With that, we'll take a few questions.
Governor, do you feel that it's right for critics to say that you're just a photo op while you're looking to run for president?
The American people saw